Global happenings today. We communicate. We analyze global news.
Welcome back to our channel. Fubara has been in the eyes of the news for a while, ever since he was reinstated as the governor of Rivers State. But the most captivating part of it is his sudden and free alignment with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, whom most people consider to be his captor, the man who illegitimately and unconstitutionally suspended him. And it has left most Nigerians with so many thoughts. But for him, he feels that why he did that was because he needed peace at a time like this. Anything for peace so that the River State people can enjoy development. But other persons are seeing it from a different perspective. And it got my attention what this analyst had to say about, Fubara. And he says that Fubara is only a governor in name. And he drew his analogy from what he called the Stockholm syndrome. Let me give you an insight to what he was saying. He said, in trying to understand curious conduct of Larry Fubara since the reinstatement as the governor of Rivers State after serving out a 6-month suspension slammed on him by the headmaster of Nigeria's democracy, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and his class captain, Some Wike, Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, I have had to take a second look at the term Stockholm syndrome. As AI overview of the phrase explained that in August 1973, 4 employees at the Banking Bank in Stockholm, Sweden, were held hostage by a robber named Jan-Erik Olsen, and his accomplice was Clark Olsen for 6 days. During the stand of the hostages developed an emotional connection with their captors and became afraid of the police. That one of the hostages famously stated during a call with the Swedish Prime Minister that she trusted her captors but feared the police more. Following the saga, a Swedish psychiatrist and a criminologist who died in November 29, 1988, coined the phrase Stockholm Syndrome in explaining the unexpected behavior of the hostages who display sympathetic and form an affinity with their captors. It was strange and inexplicable to the Swedes at the time, just as Fubara's conduct 52 years after had left a lot of people scratching their heads in disbelief. But truth be told, Fubara is as much a hostage as the Stockholm Quartet. Here is a man who, though thoroughly humiliated and stripped of all powers, is still grateful to his tormentors for their kindness and benevolence. But do you blame him? After all, allowing him to prefix once again his name with the exotic phrase, His Excellency, and driven around in siren blaring convoy with security details to boot is indeed a privilege in his circumstance. After all, didn't his tormentor-in-chief, Wike, say on Channel Television last Thursday that the very day Tinubu lifted the state of emergency that he would have prolonged the emergency rule if he so desired? According to Wike, he said, if we didn't want this state of emergency to be lifted, we would have done 1 or 2 things to ensure that it continues, were his exact words. So why won't Fubara, who knows this fact, be grateful that Wike, his Lord and personal Savior, was magnanimously enough not to travel that route, but instead choose to deliver him from the throes of sudden political death, even if he attaches the most stringent and obnoxious string over, as indeed he did? It is obvious that the 6-month quarantine period was used to purge Fubara of any iota of self-worth and sense of grandeur that the exalted office of governor imputed in occupants. First, his traducers, ensuring there was no triumphant entry for him after he was restored to office, kept him away. Of course, Wike, who apparently knew his whereabouts, said no law required him to resume work immediately. Do you know whether he is in Abuja doing 1 or 2 things? Do you know whether he is in Lagos? He queried, wondering why the long-suffering people of Rivers State should be privileged to know the whereabouts of their governor. Even the limited reception that was accorded the returnee governor of on September 19 at the Port Harcourt International Airport was counted against him as an egregious breach of the agreement of surrender he signed with his tormentor. That was the point that Bright Amole, President General of the Grassroots Development Initiative, GDI, and an unabashed Wike made when he took the umbrage at Fubara supporters for the airport reception, calling it an act of enmity towards members of the State House of Assembly, expressing surprise that Fubara allowed such a gathering and questioning the logic behind welcoming him while ignoring members of the State House of Assembly. Mawale said it would further widen the rift between his supporters and those loyal to Wike. That is how untenable Tinubu and Wike have made Fubara's position. He is a fair game to all comers, and he is helpless because any response from him is considered a breach of the agreement of surrender he willingly signed with his oppressors, which explain why, despite vowing not to take President Tinubu's kindness for granted and the fulsome praises he heaped on his political leaders, Wike Fubara still dashed off to Abuja the next day, not only to see Mr. President and tell him that he was back and resume his responsibility as the governor of Rivers State, but also to seek his guidance on how to avoid further political crisis in Rivers State. It is a father and son discussion, telling him thank you and seeking his guidance so we don't find ourselves in any situation that will bring crisis again. He, Tinubu, advised me on what to do and how to go in the right direction, Fubara had told journalists at Aso Rock Villa after meeting with Tinubu, a classic case of the Stockholm syndrome. In all this effulgence, burning drama of Fubara, he had not bothered to spare a thought for those who struck out their neck for him. Of course, doing so will be counted as another breach of the agreement of surrender he signed with his tormentor. Understandably, well-meaning Nigerians are angry with Fubara and have called him unprintable names, but there is a need to moderate our judgment. As sickening as his conduct and public utterance may be, Fubara, a creation of Wike, is only but a pawn on the Tinubu-Wike political chessboard. He deserves pity because, truth be told, he has never been allowed to be a governor in the real sense of the word. In fact, it was his pretense at being one that led to the brouhaha in Fubara's first coming of the more than 25 commissioners in the state. The only one that came through him was Joe Johnson, who was saddled with the information portfolio. Even at that, he pleaded with Wike to be granted a concession, a plea that was rejected. That was the beginning of the crisis. As a governor, Fubara would seek permission to be allowed to attend meetings of the PDP Governors Forum. He must also get clearance from Abuja before anyone could visit him in Port Harcourt. His wife was not even allowed to attend meetings of Governor's wife with the First Lady. It is difficult to say if his positive feeling towards his abuser is a survival strategy to help reduce the threat of further harm, but the question is, what more harm, politically and psychologically, can be inflicted on him that will be worse than the kitchen sink thrown at him by Wike and his surrogate from the onset? But more importantly, must he answer a governor even when he knows that in real terms he is not one? Because, truth be told, right now, the de facto governor of Rivers State is Nyesom Wike. Even when Fubara on paper continues to parade himself as one, Fubara is in government, but Wike is in power, effectively in charge. For instance, all the 23 local government chairmen, their deputies, and 319 councillors in the state owe their allegiance to Wike. The 32 members of the Rivers State House of Assembly are beholden to him. In Fubara's second coming, he will not be given the privilege of appointing any state official, not even his personal staff, not to talk of commissioners, and whatever appropriation bill he presents to the assembly will be vetted by the strongman in Abuja. In any case, Fubara has also reportedly signed off an agreement that forbids him from seeking re-election in 2027. So, he is a man to be pitied, a man whose understanding of what peace entails is fundamentally flawed in throwing all well-meaning people of real estate under the grinding wheels of Wike's locomotive engine. Fubara said peace has returned to the state. The biggest disservice he is doing not only to the state but the entire country is that he is destroying by his acquiescence and puerile interpretation of peace the constitutional significance of the office of a governor. But while it may be right to say that all these had happened because Fubara is a creation of Wike, the question is, how do Rivers people ensure that come 2027, the man who will emerge governor will be a creation of the collective electoral will? What a question. What a question. And this is coming via the office of a political analyst, Amechi Oji, my colleagues in the House. What's your standpoint on this, looking at where this man is coming from? Very brief.
The events of the past few days have shown that the political crisis in Rivers State, which escalated from the end of October last year, is far from being over. As expected, the sentiment is shifting from the main actors to their supporters, some of whom are young.
Some sort of synergy. Fubara is taking the free aid given to him via this crisis to get closer to Mr. President. And he wants to swear direct allegiance to Mr. President, where even the structure he's talking about, whatever he wants, he can rely on him. And he wants a situation where he can actually boycott, so that whatever thing, he would have contact with Mr. President. Whatever thing that does not sit well with him, as a father and son now to Mr. President, he could always go negotiate with him so that he can bring Wike to order. So he's playing a serious mind game here, a triangle kind of system, and time will eventually tell if this will work.
Well, whatever our opinions are, don't forget that every iota of political structure in Rivers State belongs to Wike. 32 members of the Legislative House is Wike. The chairman, Wike. Councillors, Wike. Appointees, Wike. So I don't even know if he has an escape route. Let's leave it there. Let's meet in our conversation and talk more on this.